my entire life, you prepare for something, you succeed at it. And in this moment, here I am doing something I wish and I hoped and I wanted to do so badly. And I wasn't anatomically able to feed my child.
That really gets to the heart. Welcome back to the Women on the Move podcast. I'm your host, Sam Saperstein. In this episode, I'm speaking with Laura Modi, the CEO and co-founder of the organic infant formula brand, Bobbie. From her early days as a first-time mom navigating formula options in a drugstore to founding Bobbie, Laura's journey reflects her commitment to revolutionizing the infant formula industry. She's providing a better, more transparent formula option for parents, free from unnecessary additives, while also focusing on fostering a culture of confidence in parenting. Before founding Bobbie, Laura played a significant role at Airbnb as the director of host operations, where she helped shape the company's international expansion and community building. I'm so excited to be speaking to her today to hear about how she's taking on infant formula. Laura, welcome to the Women on the Move podcast. It is great to have you on with us.
Thank you, Sam. Delighted to be here.
So what we love to do with our founders is go back to your origin story, why you created the business. So take us back to that day when you were in the drugstore looking at formula options.
PTSD. Back to that moment. They always say it like starts with a problem. Well, this is a visceral one. I just assumed I would breastfeed. I went into motherhood, Irish Catholic woman, thought it would be easy. And you're told by society and everyone around you that this is something you can do. This is completely natural. So you don't even go in thinking otherwise. I don't think I had even thought of infant formula before having a child.
Yeah.
But I went in and it wasn't that natural. I got mastitis several days in. For anyone who's listening and they've heard of mastitis, I've no doubt they're probably shuddering because it is an infection of the breast where your tissue gets damaged. There's blisters, there's blood. It is not the best moment. On top of the fact that as a new mother, you're also not feeling yourself. You're 40 pounds overweight. You've got dark circles. You're questioning your identity in every single way. Who am I? Where am I going? Will I ever be myself? And in your most vulnerable state, you feel like a complete failure. And those emotions are hard to shake because like my entire life, you prepare for something, you succeed at it. And in this moment, here I am doing something I wish and I hoped and I wanted to do so badly. And I wasn't anatomically able to feed my child.
That really gets to the heart.
It does. And, you know, we'll get into like more of like why Bobbie really exists, but it's the emotions and you know, people talk about Bobbie and it's the connection to feeling not guilty just as much as a good product.
So there you were, you needed to buy formula for your newborn.
Formula.
And you're looking at the options at the drugstore. What do you see there?
Well, to the left and right, I saw cat food and diapers.
Okay, so now this is what you're focused on, right? This is
like
your
I'm in
choice.
the middle aisle of a pharmacy, a place that you go for a medical solution.
Yes.
Not food.
Yes.
It didn't feel natural. It's 10 p.m. at night. Oh, even worse. I had to ring a button to get someone to open up.
Oh, it was locked.
It was locked. So now you almost feel like you were asking for permission in a way that you felt shamed. You go, you buy the product. And I remember that feeling of, I really hope they give me the bag that isn't transparent because I would like to get from here home without anyone knowing that 5 days into having a baby, I need to feed her formula. I mean, I get emotional thinking about
It's a lot.
how
That's
vulnerable.
heavy.
It is heavy. And, you know, we'll get to the feeling of 8 years later with the fire and passion to say, oh, it doesn't matter. But at the time, it does matter.
Yeah.
I turned the can around and I remember seeing ingredients that I knew in that moment I probably wouldn't feed myself.
Like?
Corn syrup. Let's use the obvious one. Palm oil, which, you know, is directly related to things like constipation. And then ingredients or words that I'd never even heard of are hard to articulate.
Right.
And I think a lot of people could say, well, just because you can't articulate it doesn't mean it's not important. That's true. All of that said, in my most vulnerable moment in that place, I didn't feel comfortable feeding her this. So I'm reading it, I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling guilty. And on top of it, I knew there should have been a better option.
Yeah, for sure.
Me and my husband, we got into the conversation. It's like everything else in life, you look around, has evolved from our granola bars to the cereal to everything in this home. And why is it that the same formula I'm buying my daughter is probably the same one I was fed 40 years ago?
Right. Great question.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, the genesis was a mix of questioning why the industry hasn't changed, to the ingredients in the product, to my emotional guilt and vulnerability. And it set me off on what I would refer to as my first and only PhD of studying the ins and outs and becoming maniacally obsessed with understanding infant formula.
So break that down for us a little bit. You think about what you feed babies should seem all natural. Maybe you breastfeed, so that is, nature's milk. How do you even study this? And could you even whip this up in your kitchen like a lot of founders do? How do you even make this?
Okay, no, you cannot whip it up in your kitchen, but I had to learn that through, osmosis of learning this. That's a great question, because it brings me back to even trying to disrupt an industry. And I remember that feeling, I want to take on this industry, but it wasn't like there was a yellow pages of infant formula companies that you could call and find out how to do this. There was no playbook online. The FDA didn't have a public phone number that you could just pick up and call. And it was a lot of cold calling on LinkedIn, trying to find people in the industry that'd be willing to have a phone call. I remember doing a Google search for baby formula expert, and I landed on babyformulaexpert.com. I found a woman on it. I made a phone call, and we spent 3 hours one evening talking about it. She educated me on the product, the science, the matching of breast milk, the importance of it. One very vivid memory I have is being in bed. I was like, I'm pretty sure I want to do this. And I was trying to find a book to help me learn how to be able to understand infant formula and the process and the manufacturing and science behind it. And I found one book. It was The Biochemistry of Infant Formula Manufacturing Practices.
Wow.
Riveting.
Yes.
Horrific. Long, hardback book.
But is this the Bible of...
This was the Bible. And I remember going and I found it on Amazon, and it was $217.
Oh my goodness.
For a book. I remember in that moment sitting there going, turning to my husband, I was like, honey, if I buy this book, like, we're all in.
Yeah.
There's no turning back.
Right,
I'm about to spend $200 on a book. He's like, that's an expensive book. I was like, I know it's an expensive book, but this is the start. If I do this now, I'm going to have to learn it. We're in it. Obviously, there's many other stories like that where it's one step leads you to the next, but the learning journey was long.
That is great. So tell us about how you connected with your co-founder, Sarah, and what put the two of you on the path to do this company together.
So me and Sarah worked together at Airbnb and worked hand in hand through all different operational challenges. Funny enough, through our journey of having kids and working together at Airbnb, not once did we ever talk about our feeding journey, which is another problem in society, that we just don't talk about these things.
Yeah.
I left, started Bobbie, personal pain point, and about a year and a half into being in a place where the product was up and running, we were ready to go, I remember sitting there going, it's a long journey to build a company.
Yeah.
And started hiring folks. And I remember turning to Sarah and I was like, I want you to do this with me. And I'll never forget at the time having investors say, but you need to find your food scientist. You need to find your technologist. You need to find the manufacturer as your co-founder. And at the end of the day, when you're on a long journey of building a company, it's actually completely the opposite. You need to find your work wife. And that's exactly what I did.
So it's so interesting. You went with your gut on such a critical decision so early on, when people are telling you to do one thing and you knew what was right for you. Was that an easy decision to make when you listened to yourself, or did you really have to struggle with that?
The decision itself was easy. Continuing to question your gut and push back on others, I think, is something, it's hard, and you just continue to learn over time.
So you set out to build a product, but also a workplace.
Yes.
So what did you start with? The blank sheet of paper. What do we want Bobbie to be? What was the culture? What was that like for you in the early mission you really wanted to adhere to?
When you have an opportunity of working within a company, and, I'll go back to early days at Airbnb, and you can tell that people are not there because they want a paycheck. They're there because they fundamentally believe in the disruption, the product, the change, even the people that they work with.
Right.
It is toxic energy in the most healthy, beautiful, incredible way. You are addicted to it. And that energy I remember having at Airbnb, Sarah as well, was one that you walk away and you think, there's no way you can go back. And we have an opportunity to replicate and get to build a company where we say, I am going to transition from my personal life into my professional life, and it shouldn't feel harsh. How do we create a work culture where I am here because I want to be and not because I have to be?
Yeah. Which is rare, by the way.
It's
especially
so
to
sad.
sustain that.
Yes.
And so how did you go about looking for employees who you wanted on this mission with you?
Well, you have to become very good at hiring to be able to
Yes.
like assess that out.
And in a startup, you really need to hire great people. You
Mm-hmm.
can't really make mistakes given there's a small team and you have to get a lot done.
I believe in the good in humans in general.
Mm.
And that if humans are in the right place, good humans are in the right place, they will figure out how to do the job. And you hire people again who have the appetite, who have the passion, who want to be there, then it's our job as a culture to be able to foster that and to build it.
I love that.
So assessing it, you have to spend just as much time interviewing people, not just against the skill set of what they're coming in to do, but against the reason they're leaving their other job that at the time and early on was probably paying a hell of a lot more than we were able to as a startup.
Yeah.
And you need to know that they're willing to come in and do this job in the same way that you're waking up every day wanting to succeed at it.
I love that. Okay, so you formulate this new infant formula. Where did you have to go? How did you test it? How did you make sure that it was going to be the right one?
I'm laughing because I think if I knew very early on exactly how to do it, I probably wouldn't have done it.
So many people say that. So
I
maybe it was
know.
good to not know everything going in.
It's definitely good. Like that ounce of naivety is
Yeah.
probably the secret sauce to succeeding. You learn on the go, and then you go, oh God, if I knew that, I probably wouldn't have gotten this far.
But I'm
And
going.
you just keep going, right?
going.
And then you also need to have enough self-awareness that you don't know it and you're willing to keep learning. But I essentially did a global standard review. What were some of the best infant formulas in the world? What does breast milk look like? And how do we get as close as possible to breast milk in the most natural way possible?
Yeah.
And I must say this because I always worry about these things getting taken out of context as well, which is breast milk is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And by no means was I trying to find a world where I was replacing breast milk or creating something, and it's really important to note this, better than breast milk. I think breast milk is the most beautiful, dynamic, truly dynamic thing that you will ever come across. This is a mother who's literally producing milk from their body. It's magical.
Yeah, it really is.
But not everyone can do it.
Yeah.
And the reductionist perspective that sometimes I hear in society, which is, yeah, but they should just be breastfeeding. I'm like, but maybe they can't.
Right.
And for so many different reasons. And in absence of not being able to do it, shouldn't the alternative be the closest, best possible solution?
Right.
And if we keep taking the reductionist path, then you're going to have 83% of society out there on what everyone deems second best. So on my journey, I wanted to create something that I felt could get as close as possible in the most natural way, so that in absence of not being able to breastfeed, you don't feel guilty.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So I'm not a chemist, and maybe this is a little over my head, but why is it so hard to replicate breast milk? What's the hardest thing to do?
So I said dynamic. Your breast milk on your second day of feeding is going to be different to what your breast milk looks like maybe on your second week of feeding and your second month of feeding. Your diet, your stress, your environment, your anatomical background and physiology all plays into that. So now you take how different your breast milk is in comparison to the next woman and the next woman. It's very different. So replicating something that's meant to be standard and safe in a way that is dynamic at every given point in time is extremely challenging. So what one needs to be able to do is break down what is the major components of breast milk, the carbs, the proteins, and the fats. And that's the most simple way to be able to describe it.
We get those. Yeah, we understand
The
those.
key factors to be able to help a baby develop and thrive, which is words that parents hear all the time. Are they developing? Are they thriving? Are they growing? Are you seeing them hit the scales they need to? And those factors are very important. So you take the carbs, proteins, and fats and you say, how can we mimic that in the nutritional output of formula? But what is hard is matching the dynamic nature of what breast milk provides.
And now you have a line that does that has it at different stages, presumably of different stages of development.
You can, and you can grow with it in different ways. But there is the magic all-in solution to be able to ensure that a baby is getting the main nutritional output they need across the board.
Yeah.
And also knowing that once a baby hits a certain point, they're also getting other nutrition in other ways as well. So knowing that supplementation is happening, but it's not just hard to mimic breast milk. It's also hard to make sure that you're creating an alternative that is safe.
Of course.
We're not creating a typical CPG product. We're not a granola bar or a typical beverage. We are creating a product that is feeding the most vulnerable audience the sole nutrition, and they're consuming nothing else for a long time.
That is a lot of pressure. That is a high bar. So Bobbie got FDA approval, the green light to launch in 2020. That is such an accomplishment. Tell us about that. What did it take to get there? And how did that make you feel once you did?
How did it make me feel? On one side, it's like, it was amazing. But it was also about effing time. That feeling of, and I say this with humility, which is the feeling of we have worked very hard to get here. And it was like milk, sweat, and tears to get to that place. We probably created the playbook in many ways. And there was a lot of diligence and thoroughness, quality testing, trialing, consumer research studies to get to that place where when you got the green light, it wasn't a feeling of shock. No. It was a feeling of reward, and it was about time.
And the recognition for all the hard work. So 2020, quite an unusual year, of course. Very hard to be in a business, very hard to be in a baby formula business. There was a nationwide formula shortage at a certain point too, since pandemic. Tell us about that. How did you get through that? And how is Bobbie positioned differently, actually, from other companies that enabled you to address what was going on?
A nationwide infant formula shortage. So you start a company and, especially one like infant formula is controversial. Most people I would get into conversations with, they'd say, what are you doing? What's your company? I'd say infant formula. And they're looking for the exit. They're like, the last thing I want to do is talk about infant formula. They don't want to talk about their journey. It had a dirtiness to it. And I say that very publicly now because I think a part of what we need to do is change the conversation.
Yeah.
So before the nationwide formula shortage, it was forgotten. And not just by the average person in society, also by those working in it, even within the FDA and some of the existing companies. And I again, I'm not pointing fingers. I'm highlighting it in a way which is when an industry hasn't changed in decades, complacency sets in. So what happened was 2 companies were feeding over 80% of the country.
Which is a remarkable domination.
Huge. And when we see this in many other industries, when 2 companies, a duopoly owns the majority of the industry, you are essentially setting up a lack of resiliency that in case something happens, how are you planning to combat that issue? And what happened was one company had a failure and that failure required them to close their doors, of which was absolutely the right decision. It was safety first above anything else. But what we forgot was, as a country, for an essential good, we became reliant on those 2 companies feeding America. So when one of them had to close their doors, of which was over 30%, it took several weeks to get to a place where all of a sudden shelves were empty and parents were driving, state to state almost, to find, literally to find food to feed their babies.
Unbelievable stress.
We were only on the market for 1 year. Typical startup. You're all excited. You're learning on the go. You're seeing your growth go up. And when the shortage happened, I'll never forget my head of growth. She came to me and she said, Laura, our customer count, it just doubled overnight.
Wow.
And on one side, you're sitting there going, well, that's amazing, right? Like, we're growing. This is exactly what a company wants to see. But I took off my CEO hat at that time. And I remember feeling like a mother, which I was, feeding my 3rd child. And I remember in that moment thinking, we can't run out of infant formula. And she said, well, we have some safety stock, but if we do not turn off our top of funnel growth, essentially turn off our website and stop growing the business, we will run out of formula for our existing customers.
Oh my goodness. So now you're in just this impossible dilemma.
It was literally that growth innovators dilemma. And you're sitting there going, and everyone's going, well, will it be over? I'm like, I have no clue.
No one knew.
Like no one's looking into a crystal ball. Like how long will this formula shortage last? You would assume they'd catch up and make more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You'd assume the government's going to step in and fix it. So I got on with my investors and we started debating, what do we do? And I'll never forget a few of them on the side of just like, well, I'm sure it'll be over. Just keep growing. It seems ridiculous. Don't turn it off. A few others like, but in the case it is,
right.
This isn't a good situation. We're not a sofa where it's like, we're coming back soon. It doesn't work that way. So it was less than 24 hours later, I turned to our platform team and said, turn off the website.
Wow.
We can't take the risk. And we put out a message and it got very mixed reactions. And that message was, we have made a promise to our existing subscribers and I will hold that commitment that whatever product we produce, we need to keep it for them. And, you know, if you want to join our waitlist, we're here for you. And it got resounding support from those that felt supported, and even those that wanted to be part of our future community said, I want to be part of that. I want to be part of the company and the leadership who says we take care of our parents.
That's an amazing promise.
It was a good promise.
Too. But really tough. I mean, I'm trying to think in your mind when you're sitting there getting different views from your investors as to what to do. Of course, the founder wants to grow at all costs. Why would you ever want to turn off customer acquisition? And yet you were in a situation where not many people have to do that, where there's a product that's literally not to be found with children on the other end. I mean, that's quite remarkable.
And we became the only company at the end of the shortage that was able to continue to feed its customers. And we had to keep our website off for 7 months.
Wow. Off for new.
Completely.
Interesting.
And you know, it's a case study in itself. Supply and demand, typical problems. But I think the case study is not supply and demand. I think the case study is your reaction. And what are the things that you do in the moment that then result in the knock-on effects of growth and loyalty and organic growth after the fact.
So tell us about that. So you could turn it back on. The shortage was coming to an end. How did the new customers find you then? And did you see a bump in customers that couldn't, join you until then?
So you kind of create your own problem, right? You create a wait list and the wait list was growing and growing and growing. And it got to the place where you're like, oh God, we have 40,000 parents, we have 50,000, 60,000.
Wow.
The problem is that now you're staring at the wait list and you're going, guys, we have to keep producing product to serve the wait list.
Right.
So you're trying to build your safety stock and the wait list is going up and the safety stock has to keep going up. And at one point we actually had to cut off the wait list.
Oh no.
Because otherwise then we were promising people they'd get off when they couldn't. So it was a sequencing game where our forecaster had to very carefully figure out how are we promising just enough that we continue to have. So it was probably another year, a full year later, post the 2022 shortage, all through 2023, where it was letting people slowly off our wait list to be able to come on. But over the course of those 2 years, we grew 100% organically.
Wow.
And as a D2C business, predominantly a direct-to-consumer business, not having to go pay and acquire customers, it allowed us to look at our marketing dollars in a very creative way.
Love that.
And to instead, rather than seeing what we were coming out and doing and saying as a way to sell product, let's come out and try and change culture, change the conversation. And be part of change for the industry.
And so did you do different campaigns with different messages than you were planning? And what did you want to say to everybody at the time?
Well, we did a fabulous campaign with one of our key partners, Ashley Graham. She just had her 2 twins. And we had no product at the time. And it was all about combo feeding. And the message was, no matter how you feed, your babies will result in the same way. And to give people confidence that combo feeding and changing the conversation and the culture of feeding and to end essentially the feeding wars was what we needed to do. So we put out a big culture campaign and that culture campaign got more attention for the conversation than it did the product.
Wow. Which of course will have knock-on effects on the product, but
That's
also
right.
position you as you're not just a company selling infant formula. You are selling community or building community.
Yes.
And conversation.
Exactly.
The fact that you also were doing things differently with a subscription model is really interesting. So tell me about the experience you wanted new parents to have versus going to the drugstore late at night and having to look at shelves.
You know, it's not overly radical, but it was one of those things in the moment of thinking, what is our business model? And this was a product that you want to be able to get reliably, and consistently every month.
You need it.
You need it. And again, like I said, it is an essential good, unlike a typical CPG product where one month you want it, the other you don't. So by being able to calculate what age a baby is, how much are they feeding, we could get to a level of predictability for how much formula you need. So really it came down to reliable service and making sure that there wasn't any disruption in someone receiving the product that they need.
Yeah.
And it's not just the D2C side of it. Is we've gotten so much joy too doing fun things related to the products. When you open the box, I'm so proud of this. We create these unique stickers. And these unique stickers have messages of support and advice, pats on the back, making you smile.
I love that.
So when you open your box of 8 cans, each one will have a different sticker and a message of support. And I can't even begin to tell you, out of our customer service tickets, which we did not expect to see, more of them are related to their love and even recommendations for what should go on the stickers
funny, really?
than thoughts or complaints in relation to the product.
That's when you know you're onto something really special, when your customers are willing to do your job for you, actually, right? Create those stickers, build a community. They're probably telling their friends, they're looking at it with their partners. That's amazing. That's really special.
It's such a joy. You know, then all of a sudden you're creating a department for people to, you know, contact in about the stickers.
Yeah,
but
not a job you thought you'd have to. Well, I'm sorry to say I had my children well before you had founded your company, because I would have really enjoyed using the product. So let's talk about your other experience, your other work experience for Bobbie. So you worked at Airbnb as director of host operations. What did you learn there from such a unique company as well? They were also breaking boundaries and doing things new. And what did you learn there that really influenced your leadership at Bobbie?
I feel like we had a very, very fortunate seat in the company. And I remember very acutely being early on at Airbnb and getting a front row seat watching our relatively young founders and watching the CEO of Airbnb, who is a friend, a fabulous leader. And I am honored. I mean, truly, and I say that with so much gusto, to have a front row seat watching what they built.
Yeah.
And how it shaped my leadership is, I think the biggest thing was, never forget one story. It was early on. And the CEO of Airbnb, he came in and he announced a new hire. And he said, we're going to hire a chief counsel. And he said, and I'll be honest, I didn't know what a chief counsel officer was until yesterday. And he gave us the definition. And I remember thinking, wow, how beautiful is it that you have come forward with that level of vulnerability and you recognize the learning journey, because it is a learning journey. And if you are not opening your aperture, and as my dad would always say, like one of the greatest dangers in life is thinking you know it all.
Oh, yeah.
And you literally cannot disrupt something. I mean, the literal definition is being able to come in and change something, in which case you have to learn.
Yeah.
So that front row seat at Airbnb in that past experience was, I watched a group of people from the CEO the whole way down recognize that they were taking something on that they needed to learn. And I think it's one of the biggest things I apply to my day-to-day job.
And how would that come across? So for your own employees, what would they see?
What they see is vulnerability in not knowing something and trying something, openness and forgiveness to fail. And in the moments of maybe the ball getting dropped, standing up and owning it and recognizing what were the 2 or 3 things that we maybe learned in that moment that we get to apply as we try it again. But going from 0 to 1 is really hard.
Oh, yeah.
And going from 0 to 1 in a disruptive company doesn't stop just because the product's being made and the idea is now in motion. Going from 0 to 1 happens in your processes, your systems, your creation of new standards. Right now, we own a manufacturing facility and we're saying, can we disrupt what standards look like in the way something's manufactured? Let's redo it. Let's rethink it.
So when Bobbie came onto the market, it was the first baby formula brand in 6 years, a new one to be released, and is now the fastest growing brand since the 1980s. And that's unbelievable because, as you say, this was a pretty mature market, probably had been growing very steadily. It's based on obviously how many babies get born every year. What do you think really led to such a big demand and such a great response that you saw?
I think two things. I think the first, my business investor side of me will answer, which is it is a big market that hasn't been untouched or has been untouched for decades. There was a gap. And I think as a mother, it was very obvious that it was broken and there was a huge appetite to come in for something different. There was a black market. But why it wasn't being touched was because the people who were seeing it were not in a position in their most vulnerable state in their first year of having a baby to say, hey, let me just pause in the middle of questioning my entire identity to go do something about this. So I honestly think that it was one of those things, and I now hear it from people when I say what Bobbie is and what got me here. I always get the reaction, oh, that was smart. Like that was a broken industry. In hindsight.
Yes.
So I do think to take something on, you need to see that it's broken, but you also need to have the experience and confidence to go do it. And I think those two things collectively, someone feeling the problem, there wasn't enough people out there in the moment who also felt like I could go take this on. I think secondary was we saw this as a community-driven brand from day one. And it is, and I fundamentally believe that. My story was the thing that started it, but it's every other person who uses Bobbie, who wants to be part of Bobbie, who wants to join Bobbie, their stories are fueling the growth. And we're giving them a platform where their story can finally be told, because it is one that's important. It's one that needs to be shared. How you feed your child, how you're going through those emotions, the symbolism of everything around it and the support needed. It is very community driven.
You mentioned at one point feeding wars and how there's both sides of this issue. Breast is best versus formula. But you also talked about the combo feeding and maybe doing both. You're really tapping into something that's so primal, I think, for so many women who are facing this situation, and their fathers too. How do you think you've been advancing this conversation? How do you want it to be advanced in terms of having a legacy for what you're able to contribute?
Well, I don't think it needs to be about one versus the other. And again, this is where my investors will say, like, no, you gotta push Bobbie, you gotta say Bobbie's best. I don't. I think whatever works for you is what's best. And I want our legacy, Bobbie's legacy, to get to a place where feeding and questioning how you feed and feeling guilty about how you feed and people judging how you feed is not part of the dialogue. You need to get back to the joys, the ups and downs, the becoming of a parent. That is what people need to focus on, not the how are you feeding your child. Let's move away from how we're feeding and what we're feeding to the joys of parenting. So I want us to drive ourselves out of a job would be the legacy. How do you get to the place where we have fundamentally changed conversation and culture is following, that people are not sitting back going, I really hope people don't think formula's in my bottle. That needs to change.
Yeah. I have to ask you this question as a female founder. Tell me about the fundraising part of your experience. What was unsavory about that? Did people question, was this a viable business? Are you going to stop when you have your children? You know, what did you hear from investors?
I was 8.5 months pregnant with my second child when I started to go out and fundraise.
Okay, so let's pause on that for a minute. So an 8.5 months pregnant woman is coming into investors who generally don't see that kind of founder.
No.
And if they do, they probably make assumptions.
What they saw was, instead of a woman who was coming in to pitch them, who had the business acumen, a resume to be able to prove that she could do this job. I wasn't a 20-year-old founder. I had experience working in Google and Airbnb. I was a previous investor. So much of my resume should prove that walking in there with a very strong business pitch would have had them go, I'm all in. Instead, what they saw was a mom with a passion project.
Your hobby.
My hobby.
By the way, breast milk is not generally people's hobbies, so I'm not
No.
really sure where they would go with
No.
that, but okay, say more.
Yeah, powdered milk was not my dream.
Right.
I never thought I would
What do
see
you do with
myself
that?
being here.
Collect it? I
It was
don't
a harsh shift.
Yeah.
And again, you'll never hear me speak ill of anyone or anything. So I say this, which is, these are just natural challenges that we're up against in life in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I say we, I mean, I'm sure that there's a male in a different situation trying to do something different who has their own story. Cards were stacked against me. I didn't come from the world of infant formula, so that was the first judgment. Why would you jump from technology into CPG and making milk? That's right, you want it for your baby. So I was missed out as being seen as the entrepreneur with a real market opportunity to succeed. And instead, the assumptions came to the table, and the assumptions were a mom with a passion project. So it was hard. I spoke to 68 investors.
Oh my goodness.
Of which 4 of them ended up investing. And I woke up every day through those final weeks of my pregnancy, waking up to 4 new pitches, 5 new no's.
Oh my goodness.
And you hear, it's also painful because you're reading, with one eye open, you're exhausted. You're like, I'm ready for this child to come. I still have my other child. My husband is like, you should have stayed in the job because we would have gotten parental leave. Like, what are we doing?
No.
Everything in life, you're being questioned. I remember reading those emails thinking, is this the email that's going to push me over the edge and say, fold it, this isn't worth it.
Mm-hmm.
You can go get another job. Like, let's just move on. And the emails were everything from, I don't think this is going to work. No one's ever going to feel passionate about wanting to sell infant formula. This will never be a consumer-driven brand. You'd never get, because, I talked about how we need to get people who had platforms to be able to come out and actually share their story, because they're also parents and mothers and dads. No celebrity would ever want to talk about infant formula and their feeding journey. I mean, it was one no after another with an excuse after an excuse for not investing. And I talked about 0 to 1 being hard. That was really like 0 to...
biggest mountain you have to climb
It
first.
was. And how easy it would have been, like now thinking through this, how easy it would have been to just wake up that one morning and say, nah, I only spent $200 on a book. Let's just move on,
But thankfully you didn't for so many people and their babies. So what must make you feel really proud is hearing from your customers about what they think and how you helped them and how you were there in a very, very tough time. Can you share some of your customer feedback with us?
I get into this habit now every day. I mean, obviously, when you start to build a company, now all of a sudden you're moving between meetings where you're dealing with supply chain problems and just the woes of building a company.
Yeah.
I mean, it's constant. Implementing NetSuite, not the most fun meeting, but you got to do these things. But I've gotten into the habit now of every morning with a cup of coffee before my day kicks off, we have a Slack channel. And that Slack channel is Bobbie Customer Love Letters. Every day, there is dozens of love letters. And if I just even in our Slack that we have right now, yesterday's one that got put in here, and our customer service team, they'll email customer service. And I really mean this. They're not like 2 sentences. These are love letters that are essays.
Wow.
And they send them in.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the first one from yesterday. Hi. It's a DM on Instagram, by the way. We are currently on day 3 in the hospital with our 2-week-old baby boy who is fighting a respiratory virus and is on oxygen. And I just wanted to say how I literally cried, all in caps, happy tears, when I pulled out the can of Bobbie I had pushed into my pack before heading to the emergency department this morning, and it reads this. And she sends a photo, and it's a photo of our stickers on the can, and it says, wisdom from our Bobbie fam is that you're stronger than you think you are.
Oh.
This mother is sitting in the emergency department with her baby who's on oxygen, and she has decided in that moment to pull out Instagram and send our company, which is a brand, but she doesn't see it as a brand. And we have to keep remembering this. We are not selling a typical company. We are both saving lives. We are helping people through what is a blip. Those ECG, charts.
Yes.
I believe becoming a parent in the first year of parenting is the biggest blip you will see on your life map. And we as a company, we as a brand we have the privilege, the beautiful, beautiful privilege of getting to play a role in their lives.
So Laura, Bobbie is not just a brand, it's an advocate for change. So tell us about your advocacy efforts and Bobbie for Change. What is that and what are you trying to do?
So one of my team came to me a few years ago and she said, Laura, you'll never guess what. Did you realize that a mother who's undergone a double mastectomy is given a free breast pump and sticky nipples, but they're not given formula to feed their babies? And when I tell you she came forward to the level of passion and fury, like, you want to feed this. You're like, okay, what are we going to do? She's like, we got to do something about this. We got to get loud about the fact that there is a policy out there that isn't helping moms through one of their toughest moments. And we decided to, in that first year, take a few mothers who'd undergone a mastectomy, who weren't able to feed their baby in the way that they wanted, and to be able to sponsor them for a full year on Bobbie.
Oh, wow.
That became the impetus and the moment where we decided we exist for so much more than creating powdered milk. So we created Bobbie for Change. And under Bobbie for Change, we fight for paid leave, new insurance policies, the Black maternal mortality crisis. We look at issues that are ancillary to what we do, but are the most important things for our constituents, which are parents.
Yes.
When I start getting into these stats, I mean, so many people have come to me and they say, I'm so happy that you do Bobbie for Change. Sometimes they say it and they don't even realize that we also sell infant formula.
Oh, that's incredible.
We've gotten to a place as a business where our very existence to fight for the issues that matter to our customers is what gets us up every day. And these aren't coming just from me and top down. These are our employees who are coming forward saying, hey, I just had my baby and they're in the NICU and our policy doesn't cover us to be able to take time off for a baby that's in the NICU weeks before leading up. So what does that do? It fires us up to not only change our internal policy, but then go create an open sourced policy so that other companies can then adopt it.
That's incredible.
So here's the other thing I'll say about Bobbie for Change, which I think a lot of companies need to internalize. In the same way that industries change and that consumers' tastes change, work cultures do as well. And there is something happening right now, which is when people decide to go to work every day, they're not seeing a transition from their personal life to professional life. It's all one. And if a company is not figuring out what they're doing to engage their employees on what they really care about and find that activism arm that is worth them looking back saying, that's my legacy. My legacy is changing that policy, helping those parents, changing laws, then what's it all worth for anyway?
You're really touching such a nerve with me because I see more and more people and younger people in their careers saying, I want to come to work for a purpose. I don't want to have to wait my whole career and do the purposeful work at the end. So I think you're totally right. And when I hear you also engage with consumers, it really makes me feel like you're creating something that's going to long last the years that you sell formula to them. That you're going to be there as a platform and a community, like you mentioned. And that's a brand that's with you for life.
Hear, hear. I want people to be able to wear Bobbie loud and proud on a sweater, even if they've never been a parent, they've never used the product, but they are so connected to our mission and what we stand for that they're willing to wear it on their chest.
I'm sure they will. It's so powerful. I mean, I just hope that would-be founders listen to your story and say, that's going to motivate me. And would-be investors listen to that story and say, maybe those assumptions I make about hobby businesses and women out there, I can put aside for other things.
And if they want to email me and say they missed out, I'm totally fine accepting those.
Let's just
emails.
recommend it to their friends. Laura, you've been so wonderful to talk to. What a pleasure. It is really inspiring to see what you built with Bobbie, just from your personal experience through thinking through culture and a product and a community. So we wish you the very best as you continue to move forward. And I'll have to recommend it, I guess, to other mothers with babies in my life.
Sam, thank you.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Laura Moody of Bobbie. This was such an inspiring conversation to hear how not only she met the market need for a product, but really developed a community. And I hope that would-be founders out there take inspiration from her and push forward to follow your dreams. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow on your favorite podcast app and please share with others. I hope today that you learned something that will help you lead with purpose.